And good morning and welcome back to MJFM at the Manx Peloton Village. We're now joined by Clare Barber, the Minister for Food, Environment and Agriculture. So Clare, how are you finding the show so far today?
So I've been hearing from all of the team up at Depot who've been setting up over the last few days, and also various farmers who I've been on the phone to. And luckily the weather has come out and hopefully dried the show field off a little bit, because there was a lot of people barefooted in Depot yesterday who'd been down here and got a bit wet. So I put wellies on. I feel like I may have overdone it now, because actually it's glorious down here. Haven't had a chance to look fully round yet, but I've seen the layout and I've seen some of the adverts, been listening to the build up, and really excited to have a chance to really spend the day and tomorrow of course looking round.
And considering how wet it's been, the ground has held up amazingly. Carol's done such a fantastic job, hasn't she?
Absolutely, and I know, when you're organising something on this scale, the months and months that go into it, and then the weather, the weather gods are there, and you hope everything will pay off. But the management and the organisation and the experience they have from so many years, with the team, and Carol absolutely up there, leading the forces. But I think it really bears tribute to the Royal Manx team that actually everyone come down. You can bring your wellies, but you don't need to.
So now going back to talking really about the farmers, people that are the reason this show exists really. So as DEFA, you're supporting farmers as a bigger picture, especially with the importance the sector plays in food security, which rightly so is a very worrying topic globally at the minute, not just here. So what has DEFA done in the past year to help solidify that we continue to have a local food security source?
There's been a number of things that we've been working through. We've obviously worked with the existing schemes, making sure that they're paying the full amounts out. That's been something I've been really committed to. So if there's an underpayment by the end of the year, we've made sure that is then paid out in full to the budget, because I think that's a commitment that was previously made. I certainly don't want to back off that. There's been work around the Lime grants, making sure there's continued support, bringing more monitor farms on board through the knowledge exchange programme. There's been work with UCM looking at opportunities for training and courses that people can book into, and then supporting other schemes that are being done through the sector, because I'm very, very keen. DEFA can't just tell people what he's doing, it's listening to what they want and then making sure we're supporting those programmes. There's also the start of the work around food security and the Future of Agriculture plan. That's going to be a big piece of work, and we've got to get that right. The timelines for those have moved back a little bit, but that was because actually we recognised just the scale of work. And it's been interesting because when we've sort of done that step back and looked at how all of those different strategies and plans interplay, food security is a missing piece. So it comes in through agriculture and it comes in a little bit through food matters, but we don't have an overarching piece around food security, which actually informs so much of that other work. And certainly, as you say, with some of the global changes, with conflict in Ukraine, with Brexit, and with COVID, very much, the spotlight was firmly shone on food security and how, as an island, we can address that properly.
Is it a concern to you if we push back the food security planning that you guys are working at the minute, that it might end up being too little too late for Manx farmers?
I think I'd be more concerned that we get it wrong. What I think we can do is get some things in early, and I think so. I've been very clear. Just because we're pushing the date of publishing a plan back doesn't mean the work's stopping. There's work still there. There's work around how we can support local production in a better way, and I'm very keen. I've had conversations with lots of different people. I would also say, though, having had many conversations with many different people in agriculture, I think everyone has different visions for how it might be. So trying to find something that everyone can buy into and be confident with is not necessarily the easiest thing, because priorities are different, understandably, for different people coming from different angles. But I think the premise of increasing local food production is something that everyone universally supports, and we need to look at how we can make sure we do that.
And it's obviously been a very tough harvest so far for farmers with the wet conditions and worry of crops being in the ground and then potentially rotting. So how are DEFA supporting those farmers at this time and then in the months to come?
So at the minute it's been very much a listening exercise. I know that there has been concern. I was talking out on a farm just the other day where they were saying they need to get the stuff out before the rain comes, because otherwise there's going to be a real problem. And I understand that some of this will be as things happen case, but the reality is we have to look at the budgets we have and we have to manage that money as a sort of fixed pot. There are exceptions where we could go back to Treasury, but I think we can all see that there are significant pressures on Treasury across all of government, and we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, for sure. And when we last spoke, we touched on the potential for road haulage equivalency, and you said yourself and Tim Johnson, Minister for Enterprise, were in discussions regarding it. Are we any closer to seeing the lovely new Manxman being able to help not just the agricultural sector, but also all businesses really get different routes to market and more affordable rates?
So that's something that I think DFE have also set up a new export group. There's work afoot within that, and from an export perspective, DFE take the lead. So what we've done is provided our insight as to where we think there may need to be short-term support in that regard, but it will be DFE who ultimately will lead on that programme. So I commented the other day, actually, I'm overdue a catch-up with Tim to follow up in that regard and see where we're at with that. But again, it's interesting, the sort of almost a delicate balance, I suppose, with making sure we don't destabilise anything locally, but making sure we've got access to those export markets so that people can grow and have a confidence around the route to market.
And now, you and I both share the same views on the Isle of Man procurement policies. And again, when we last spoke down at DEFA, we spoke about how policies worked, and you mentioned the team at DEFA were working with the procurement team to stipulate where Manx produce can be used within those existing contracts. How's that all going?
So there has been a bit of progress on that. We've had work with the AGs, where obviously that comes across all departments, so it's a relatively big piece of work. It's something I'm hugely passionate about. I think it's really important because I think it makes that statement, it's a bold statement, isn't it, that as a government we support local food. Yeah. There are some challenges remain in terms of how procurement work, but I want to now explore, and that's the instruction that I've most recently given, whether, because we know that there are challenges around some of our international agreements that prevent us in some elements of procurement prioritising local produce. Seems absurd, but that is the case, and those are things we've signed up to whether we like them or not. But there are some options around potentially emissions. So we could make statements around in procurement that we will prioritise things with reduced emissions. That allows us then to look at how we can use that to support local. So there's some new avenues we're exploring. So I'd say there have been some challenges, some blocks in the road, but we're certainly not seeing that as a stop. That is just simply let's find another way.
How do you see the agriculture sector panning out in the next 6 months really without any extra support, not just financially, but kind of without roadblocks in the way for local farmers?
I think it's an exceptionally challenging time, and I think we hear that, you're certainly sitting around the Council of Ministers table, we're hearing that from a number of different industries, that this is exceptionally difficult times. Globally, prices of import products, whatever your manufacturing is, have gone up, and there's only a certain amount I think the public can absorb when you put prices on the end. Agriculture has that increased challenge that as a general rule they're selling into someone else who's then selling on. And some of those bodies continue to make record prices, and I think that's incredibly frustrating. So actually an opportunity like the show here, where you're doing direct sales to customers, I think is really important. And so I want to make sure, and through DEFA, that we are supporting additional opportunities where people can sell directly to consumers. So we've certainly supported things like the Douglas Foodies market, but I think we want more of that. That's certainly what I'd like, is the ability to go directly in a way that's accessible and easy to people who we know in a lot of cases have busy lives and will do what is convenient. Although I think if you ask most people, they'll say, I want to support Manx. When it comes to it, and you've got a busy schedule, you've got kids running around, you've got all the other things that go on in life, I think it becomes something that sadly does get pushed to the back. We need to make that as easy as possible so that we can really encourage people to shop local.
Perfect, thank you very much, Claire. And talking about, Manx produce, what has DEFA got on show for us today?
So there's a wide selection in the DEFA tent, and it goes beyond just food as well. Obviously Isle of Man meats are down, we've got Isle of Man Creamery, there's so many other brilliant local producers. In fact, I spent yesterday in licensing court in anticipation of the Food and Drink Festival looking at options around getting our drinks produce out on display at the Food and Drink Festival. But you come to the shows here and we know we've got not just food, a plethora of drinks. We've got things that are coming straight out the ground that you can take home, literally with the mud still on, fresh from the Isle of Man soil, but also the things that have then been produced further, and some beautiful products that I can't recommend highly enough. In fact, I went to, I might crack the wine open yet, but when I was down at the Douglas Foodies market, in fact the other day, I'd sort of take my bag with me to buy, and I wished I'd taken 2 or 3 bags because they were literally loaded to the rafters, and we absolutely treated with Manx produce. And I think that's what I want to have the opportunity to go around here today, not just in the DEFA tent but all around, and also to go into the see the displays of people's entries for the competitions, because I think there's such a great opportunity there to showcase some of the work people on the island have done, and also to get people thinking about how they use Manx produce in their baking, in their preparation. And certainly, my boys at home growing runner beans and all sorts, and just getting into that idea that the taste of stuff is just so much better when it's come straight from the ground and you're eating it literally a day or two later. It hasn't been stored for 6 months or so.
We're so fortunate to be in a position where currently we are able to be relatively, self-sufficient with the majority of our staples.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be great to get the message across that if we were to lose that, it would be it would be tragic, it'd be catastrophic, really.
And I think the reality is that recovering the ground once it's been not farmed for a period of time doesn't just happen overnight. And I think there's anyone who's tried growing their own tomatoes the first time, which I did have a terrible foray into last year, will know it's not easy. The reality is the preparation and the time that you take to get things where they need to be to get a good crop. Actually, it's not instant. So this idea that in a crisis we could simply stick crops in the ground and something would grow, it doesn't work like that. So those fields need to be managed. They need to be constantly kept in rotation. And that ultimately requires us to support people who are growing them now.
It does, and I think another thing we're so lucky with here is regenerative agriculture. It seems to be, in a lot of other countries, it's this big, wow, oh my God, what's this? Whereas here, it's been a practice that has always been ongoing. Farmers have always rotated their crops. The ground hasn't had that hard impact just having cereal after cereal after cereal. It has been rotated. And I think there's so much more to farming than sometimes people are quite aware of.
100%. And through this job I've had the opportunity to go out and spend time on farms, and it's just every time I go to a different farm, it's just eye-opening. And as you say, it's not just put crops in the ground and they will grow. The time and attention that's taken to do that, as you say, the crop rotation, making sure that you're putting crops in one year that will make sure the soil's prepared so that the next crop when it's put in will grow as well as it can. And as part of that food security piece, I think it comes back to actually the ability to have those grounds ready, but that requires them being managed on a year-to-year basis. So you can't just walk away from a piece of land and then in 10 years hope that if you shove something in it will grow. It just won't work like that. So it is about making sure we keep the land in use properly for agriculture, so that when we need it, it is there, but also so that when we're here day to day, we can really enjoy the benefits of having that beautiful, local, sustainable produce with the lowest food miles you could possibly have. We just forget, I think, how fortunate we are sometimes.
Yeah, also acknowledging the difficulties that Manx farmers definitely have been facing with the extra cost they have when importing things, on top of already interest rates going through the roof. That I think sometimes people forget, it's just affects if you've got a house. Well, they've got massive businesses and farms that more than not are on a mortgage, and also their machinery is all financed, and that's just an extra struggle that they're having to put up with at the minute.
Absolutely. I think the import costs are, as you say, they're increased because you're bringing stuff in across a piece of water. We've talked about the road haulage equivalents, then it's the same piece of water that then causes some challenges on export if you can't access a local market. And the reality is that on the island our fields are smaller, so economies of scale can be harder to achieve, but yet we know that the quality of product is absolutely equivalent, if not in the most cases I would argue better than what you can achieve across the UK as a comparator, and certainly in the wider world.
The creamery speaks for itself at the end of it, doesn't it? Their cheeses are worldwide, they're phenomenal.
Because people recognise that value, that quality is there. What more could you want than pictures of the cows roaming the fields, which is not contrived. It's absolutely how it is. We all know that. You drive through the countryside and you see it day in, day out.
The normality here, and it isn't everywhere else. It certainly isn't.
100%. And we should be shouting it from the hilltops. And that's what I love about the Royal Show. I love it about the Southern Show. I think it's that opportunity to tell that story and make that awareness there, not just for those who are working within agriculture who see it day in, day out, but actually for everyone on the Isle of Man to celebrate, to enjoy, and hopefully be converted by taking home a good few bags of good Manx produce and making that something that they do on a more regular basis.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Thanks so much. Great to see you.
You too. We're going to be joined shortly by Rebecca Meyer, the new Managing Director of Isle of Man Roots.